Hi there, I'm Tom Forrestall, and once again, I'm having a show here at the Mira Godard Gallery on Hazelton Street, Hazelton Avenue, I better get it right. And I've been coming, of course, to Toronto for many years, and the Mira Godard Gallery has had my work for many years too. I'm honored and delighted with each show we've had here, and this one is a particular fond one for me because it's the latest, I guess, and it's always, so supposedly the later ones are better and better, but judge for yourself. I'm going to be here tomorrow for the opening, and if any of you want to drop by, say hello, I'd love to meet you. Terrific. I'm going to talk about a few of them here, and I'm going to talk about this one here, a Northern Harrier. It's a bit mysterious because if you don't know the title, you might say, well, what in the world are they looking at? Well, once you say a Northern Harrier, well, you know they're looking at the bird of some sort, or a hawk. And anyway, but the unique thing about this painting is that it rotates. This particular shape changes as it goes. It's the same image, but the shape and the image change as you move it around. If you move it around, say that way, or point down here, whatever way you want, or the viewer wanted, it would be different. And some people like one way and not another. You do get used to one way, the eye gets used to this way, and if you shift it, suddenly it's off balance and they don't like it as much. But it's interesting how they change as it moves around. There are several in the shows. There's another one over there of a rotating painting, and the same experience happens too. The shapes overall, all the paintings in the show are in different forms. There's no rectangles other than the watercolors. The watercolors are preliminary studies, and a preliminary study for me is a means to an end. You're going to go on and on with something else with it. And so they come out of sheets of watercolor paper or pads of drawings that I have and so on. So they're all, for the most part, rectangles. But when it comes to the final painting, I go a step further. The rectangle doesn't always relate to what's in it, very rarely. Probably the artist that does the greatest job of fitting his work into a rectangle is the great Christopher Pratt. His work, and I've known Christopher since 1954, we met at Mount Ellison, and his work is made for it. And he makes the rectangle work for him. But other artists, you think of any number of artists where the shape doesn't work, the rectangle just doesn't work, seems to be strangling. But anyway, what I attempt to do is have the shape work in a way for the content rather than for the walls and so on around it. So this doesn't relate at all to the wall around it, but it does relate to what's going on in the action inside it. And so this particular painting, I should say, too, is in acrylic. It was the last one I did for the show, and I was kind of pressed for time, and I had the ideas clear in my head and drawings. Actually, there's a drawing or two in here in my sketchbook. And the portraits generally relate to people I've known over the years. In this case, it's Claude Potter, who did a lot of work. I have an old house near Annapolis Royal, and Claude did a lot of work to fix that all up for me, that old house, and was a long and lasting friend. He's long gone now, but he still was a great friend of mine. So you see these preliminary sketches, and they're rough sort of things. I don't think well, there's other variations here too, and there's ones with dogs in it and so on. I won't get into all of these because there's any amount of it, but here you see looking up, and here's the dog here looking up and so on at a Northern Harrier. Here's some other drawings of dogs. Generally these things come out of my imagination and memory of Claude. But the drawings, and I started making drawings, and generally speaking the first ones are quite ghastly and all out of proportion and a bit crazy. But then bit by bit I solidify it and get what I need and want for the painting. anyway, and then it evolves, and same with the dog too, Claude and the dog. And anyway, the painting, of course, I've explored this idea of the rotating paintings a fair amount, and the Mira Godard Gallery have had several of them over the years, and people seem to have liked them, and they've grown on people, and they get to like them. We'll move on to one of the others now. Here's another one here now. This is a preliminary sketch here, a watercolor sketch, but the sketches are always done on the spot. The egg tempera, which are much more involved when you look at one, the way they're painted and the freeness of them, you can see that they're done very directly and quickly. Probably take an hour and a half or 2 hours at the most to do the watercolor. Whereas the egg tempera, you settle into something else. First, you settle into the form and the shape that I want to deal with, and then I get away from the rectangle and I start to piece it together. There's other drawings of dogs. That dog in the sketch there is far off and removed, but I did more drawings out of my head. The exhibition I had here, I think it's 3 years ago now, of Chuck and Fetch, and that was full of dogs, and Chuck throwing a boot and Fetch going to get it, so to speak. So I had a lot of drawings of dogs, and so I started going through some of those and fitted the dogs in a little different here. The dogs are picked up a scent of something, you know, raccoon or something went through there, a skunk, horrible thought. This is done, the sketches and this one and the painting were done above some of the lakes in Dartmouth. There's a lot of woods around the lakes there. They're kind of provincial parks and so on. And the winter was open. There was very little or no snow, and the lake was frozen. So you see this white sheet of ice through the trees, and the open frozen ground, the leaves and so on. The egg tempera would take several weeks to do. Now, not all at once. I might work for 4 or 5 days or a week, and then I'd leave it and start something else, because I'd kind of grind down to a stop with it, and I said, where am I going to go from here, you know? So better to leave it alone and go away, or look at it in a mirror and go away and forget about it, and then pick up something else and move on. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 paintings on the go at once. And this is what happens. So it does stretch out into weeks and weeks. Sometimes they're sitting around the studio in a half-baked form. But anyway, now the egg tempera, of course, has always been my main. Well, I've used acrylic and so on, but it's my main love as far as a medium goes. It is, of course, it's timeless. I don't know where it starts. I may go back to the Egyptians. You might even go back to the cave people when they were painting on their walls. And it has a, well, I guess more or less I would say it has a luminosity and an opalescence, so that when it ages, it actually becomes more beautiful. So when it's first done, it's okay, and then after, depending on the eggs and so on, and how each egg is different. Some are thick and oily, and some are thin and watery. But it ages over 2 or 3 weeks, a month, or maybe a couple of months. And then as it ages, the egg yolk purifies. It becomes clearer, I should say, and the color, one color on top of another, starts to show through. And that builds up that luminosity and that opalescence that's unique in painting. There's something about egg tempera that is. And Alec Colville taught the class in that'd be 1955. And I remember Chris and Mary couldn't take it, you know, it was just too much for them. They painted in oil and fine. The jump was too great, but there was something about it stuck with me, and it's still with me this day. I'm going to move over to this one over here now, and the sketch is over here. Just the watercolor. This is done at the the entrance to Lunenburg Harbor. I was down there for the summer teaching a course with my oldest son, William, in Egg Tempera. And I think that's our 4th or 5th summer to go down there to the Lunenburg School of the Arts. And we have a great time, and we do it. It's it's not a class, it's a workshop, I guess is the best word for it. Anyway, we stay in a beautiful home that the Adams and Knickel fishery own, and the lovely deck on looking out over Lunenburg Harbor, so they always let us stay there, and it's a beautiful spot. So I did that watercolor from the deck, but I didn't have the balloons in it. And when I got back after teaching, back in Dartmouth, back in my home, my studio, I just on a whim, I said, I'm going to put some balloons in there. So I put the balloons in, and when I got them in, I said, I'm going to do the painting, but I'm going to put a lot more balloons in it. So we move on to the painting here, the Egg Tempera it's still the entrance to Lunenburg Harbor, and incidentally, Lunenburg and the harbor and so on are a World Heritage Site, so it's protected, and it has that universal quality. But there again, compared to the watercolors, you can see I cluttered it right to the rafters practically with balloons going out, and we just called it a balloon release over the harbor. There again, Egg Tempera, and it'll start to, that's quite a recent one. I did that, finished that probably 5 or 6 months ago, I guess now, and it will age beautifully, and it'll become more luminous. The colors will become more luminous as it ages over a period of weeks, months, maybe even. It's the only medium that does that. It's compared to acrylic, which I've used on and off, and still do, and probably keep on using it periodically. I find acrylic, you've got to go all the way with it, or you don't get anything for nothing. Egg Tempera meets you halfway, and that's an interesting sort of thing in itself. This aging that I talked about in the other paintings, this meets that criteria that I was talking about of meeting it halfway in the job, to get it done. That luminosity and that opalescence, you almost get it for nothing. It's a freebie, and not much in the way of mediums give you that. Now this other little one over here is an interesting one too, and it rotates a bit, and there again, being a circle, it's a little bit unified all the way around, but can you get the light on? And you can see perhaps it's sort of lighter at the top and gets darker in shadows on the other side. Some spoons, silver spoons, lost in leaves and so on. And a subject that fascinates me. Now, this, as you look at it, I think it's one of those fruit bowls that they put oranges and apples and stuff in, bananas and things. And a good friend of mine, Dr. O'Regan, found it somewhere in a junk shop, and she said, here's the thing for you to paint a picture on. So she gave it to me, and this is the outcome of it. Now I'm going to show you how you'll see it here as it is with the light at the top. Now if we move it around, it kind of hangs on a little thing. Also, you can see how it's painted on the back too, prior to that. Around here now, see what happens. There we are. Here, I'll get the dark around here a little further. There we are. Now it's quite different because of the light. It's the same image, but it's changed, and the eye gets used to it a certain way. And probably when you change it like that, if you're used to it the other way, you say, well, I don't like it as much for some reason. And then you get used to it that way, and then you can shift it again. So that's fascinating to me, that here's an image that's the same, like the one over there, the image is the same, but as it rotates, it changes. And I'm not quite sure why that must be the equilibrium of people have, and thinking about now, I Yeah. Actually, the spoons might be of interest because I've had these silver spoons for many, many, many years. They're old Georgian silver spoons, and my dear mother, late mother, she used to collect them in the old days down in the Annapolis Valley. She would go to what they called, I think, rummage sales or something, and she'd have a few dollars she could spend. She'd find a little spoon. It'd always be different, but if she thought she had a good eye for it and she understood the markings on them and so on. And these are Georgian silver spoons, and and on and off I've done paintings of spoons. There's quite a few of them floating around, and probably a fair number right here in Toronto. But anyway, so I go back to them periodically. They're sitting in my studio, and I'll pick them up, and they remind me of Mother and Dad and all the gang years ago when I was a kid. And here's these spoons that Mother gave me. Said, "Here, something for you to paint," and I keep on doing them. So the spoons in a way mean a lot to me, and the leaves, of course, it's just part of that clutter I like to bring into things. It's over there for the other one with the dogs in it, but this has a ball in it. And what it is that one I'm looking down toward the lake, and this one I've just turned diametrically around, you might say, and looked the other way up the hill into the woods. And it's more or less the same area with golden birch, pardon me, and poplar springing up all around it. The ball wasn't there in the woods. The ball I made up. So a bit of creativity went on there too. I don't know why the ball went in there and replaced the dogs, I guess. But anyway, it's a favorite spot I can go back to again and again, and it's way up in the woods and no paths. I remember making the sketches for this, and I was painting away, and down trudges an elderly lady through the woods too, no path or anything. She comes upon me and was most startled by me. "What are you doing here, in the woods?" I could say, "What are you doing here, walking through the woods?" But anyway, I just said, I showed her some sketches I've made and so on and so forth. So, and I was all right the way she went on the leg, probably scratching her head over that one. But anyway, it's part of it. In some ways, it's linked to it. Here again, the shape was picked so it would give a lot of stability on the bottom for everything to sit on, the fallen trees and so on and so forth. Yet it's still compact and holds together. My younger son there, Frank, was a wonderful imaginative artist. He said, "It's Darth Vader's helmet." So I think everybody would know that one. Or in Nova Scotia, there's places where you find they're rather remote. They're right on the shore, very close to the shore. You don't see the water here, but it's just over the hill there, the North Atlantic. And they're called the erratics, pardon me. And it's where when the glaciers came down across Nova Scotia 100,000 years ago, there was probably about 50 or 100 miles of ice and snow on top of Nova Scotia, flattening it out, I guess. And as they melted on the edge of the ocean, they dropped these gigantic boulders every which way. And when you go into it, it has this strange sort of feeling that, who put these things here, Was it some sort of divine hand with a lot of strength, or what was it? And but they're beautiful. They're haunting. They've been there for 100,000 years, some of them, and you think, what on earth are they doing here? So they're forever fascinating. This one's very near my one of my daughter's home, Rennie's home. Rennie's very fine painter in her own right, and she and I love to go into these rocks and boulders and stuff and paint. And she was with me when I made the sketches. There's the sketches there, the watercolor done on the spot, and then here's how I shifted it over a bit. Now, as I did it, I changed it around a bit. You see, I think I added some more rocks and boulders than I didn't put in the watercolor. Also, too, this one here, I saw something it was very strange. Somebody had painted, it was a fish they had painted on the side of the rock, and for some reason or other, I said, I'm going to paint another rock on it. Basically, the painting of the rock that you see here is the same as the rock here. You might say it's a portrait of a rock. And so it's, that's why I called it the, I get the name right here, the itinerant in the erratics. So the itinerant artist traveling around and painted. It was actually, the rock, the fish was beautifully painted, but quite casually done. So whoever did it had lots of control. Well, I just changed that around. And the light was very important to me too. The dark and light, I should point out, in all my paintings is always very important to me. Shadows and lights and so on. It gives things form as far as I'm concerned. The clouds cast the shadow over that distant horizon area, and it gets very dark, and then it gets brighter, and the cloud casting shadow there. And that's a tempera, of course, too. There again, the shape of it, this long, elongated sort of a quarter of a circle or something, has a lovely feeling of stability for these rocks, even though they're different shapes. They're very stable on the ground. They're so heavy and massive, big things. If I walked up by that rock, I'd only be probably halfway up by it, so it might be 6, it might be 7 or 8 feet high, huge big boulders, and you're in awe of. But I never tire of that place. We go in and you walk somewhere, it's totally different. Yeah, Rennie knows all the good spots in there. Remember it all. Okay, good. Yeah. Now this one here, of course, is done in the same, more or less. I wouldn't say it's the exact location because they're always different, but it's above the lake. This is actually Micmac, Lake Micmac, and further down there's some beautiful homes there. And my good friend Dr. O'Regan has a lovely home there with her wharf out in the summer, up in the lake. And but here again, it's an open winter, and frozen lake, and the ground is frozen and frost covered and so on. You see the bits of the leaves coming through, and there again, and of course it's late in the day, and the sun is starting to go down, and it touches the tops of the trees, and then it gradually goes into darker and darker, so to speak. The days in the winter are shorter, of course. And and this painting now is starting to have that lovely luminosity, which tends to make it a unique thing. It's hard. It's a mysterious effect that it has, and it's hard to pinpoint what makes it so beautiful. But I think it's that luminosity and that opalescence, if that's the best words for them, that tend to make it so charming. I love that area up there. It's just very dense with trees. You can almost hardly get through them for the growth on the side of them there. Fallen trees and so on. There. So I know that whole area, and we've skated around there and played on that lake and up in the woods and so on. And I remember, I think it was 1946 or 47, a plane, one of the planes, military planes from Shearwater, crashed up here in the woods, and it was a terrible accident, and we kids all ran up to see them mess. Oh my God, it wasn't a pretty sight to see, but in those days nobody stopped. You just went up, and it wasn't in the winter. It was in the it must have been in the late winter, early spring. It happened. So those things, those memories are burnt deep within me, and I enjoyed doing this painting particularly. I guess it's just the blue of the frost with the sunlight on it and so on, and the light getting brighter as it goes up. Great spot. I'll return to it. I know I will. Yeah, this little brook is tumbling down out of the woods there. I think I called the watercolor dumping into Micmac. It's the same lake, only a different part of it. And the watercolor there again, it came out very well, and there again painted on the spot, probably a couple of hours. And when I got back home, when I finish a watercolor like that or something, I don't think much about it. I take it home, it sits around the house for a while, and then somehow or other, I said, well, I'm going to try painting with it in it. And so I take it, and then I move on, and the shape, of course, is very different, and it sort of keeps the idea that the brook goes way up into the woods and disappears into trees and so on. And of course, what's unique about this egg tempera is I did a copy of the watercolor here, sitting on the rocks with my can of brushes and bits of paint and so on in it, and you see the little watercolor there compared to the real falls. There again, they all have, we don't have them all, but they all have writing on the back of them, and some of them are quite good. Let's get that way. That's where most of the writing is. Yeah. Oh, you did a good job of that writing. Oh my golly, that wire. No, John turned this around for us because it shows you an important part of my painting. Is the back is part of the front, and the back is, you can't have a painting without a back. And for me, the back is a place to talk about the painting I did, talk about ideas I have that relate to forms and showing and shapes and why I do them. And things are all sorts of added onto it. We won't sort of try to sit and read it all, but and it relates to my studies at Mount Ellison way back in the 50s. And egg tempera painting and so on. But it gives you an idea of that. And all of the egg tempera, the watercolors, there's writing on the front sometimes some on the back, but the egg temperas all have writing on the back like that more or less relate to it or in general.
Do you write it all at once, or
it's probably sometimes most of it is at once. Sometimes when it's done, but here you can see how the colors change. Blue and goes into brownish colors or black, and then red or red lines and so on, blue again. So now that's over a period of probably I don't know, over a period of time while I'm doing the painting. Yeah. Some red writing here. And then I cram some in. Good, thanks, John. That's good. Well, if you like, John, hang it another way up. Point it down or something. Whatever. And when you get used to the eye, it gets used to it going the other way, and then suddenly you say, oh, that's not, I don't like it that way. Then you'll get used to it that way. It's funny that people have got these over the years. I've said, well, does it grow it? Yeah, we love it. And I said, what do your friends think when they walk in and look at it? And say, what in the world is, no, they love it. So I think, to tell you the truth, between us three, I think it's a time that perhaps the artist creating the shape, the time has come. It certainly probably hasn't, but it's just my idea that why not? Why can't it be universal? By using the shape, suddenly the shape becomes part of the painting. The rectangle never becomes real, or very rarely, only in, as I said, only in Christopher Pratt does he make the shape part of the painting. And it is, and it works, he makes it work. But for the most part, us mere mortals have to be content with making the shape and the form one. So they become, the two become one. The shape and the painted expression. And we covered everything pretty well. Okie doke. Now I turn this one here around a bit, and you can see, of course, the changing, the same image changing, and so on. And I turned it around to show you how, because it's scooped out like a dish, a big bowl, the edge here. So I painted the edges and all the leaves and things. There's no spoons back here, but it sort of wraps around it. So there wasn't much room in here for writing, so just a bit. And then there's the little cradle that holds it, so you can turn physically. You turn it where you lift it and turn it to what you want. But as I said, when you slowly turn that from light to dark, it does change. Is there shine on when I turn it that way? No, oh, the shadows, the shadows. It's better that way. Anyway, thank you very much. You guys.